This is the 2025 Honda Civic Sport Touring Hybrid, the updated for this year 11th generation compact sedan from Honda. And that update includes tweak styling, new tech, and an overhauled powertrain. Of course, the big part of that overhauled powertrain is this new hybrid that's offered here in the sedan, as well as the Honda Civic hatchback. It's also the powertrain for the top two of now 4 trims of the Honda Civic sedan. This top-of-the-line Sport Touring Hybrid and the Sport Hybrid. The other 2 trims, the base LX and the 1 level up Sport, get a naturally aspirated 2-liter engine. The turbocharged 1.5 liter is gone. That means that the Civic is following in the footsteps of the Honda Accord, going very hybrid heavy. In fact, Honda expects that 40% of all Civic sales will now be hybrids going forward. The question I have is, how does it affect the way the Civic drives? Let's find out. I review all kinds of cars and I have fun every time. Please subscribe and join me. The base price for a 2025 Honda Civic Sedan LX is $25,345. Deciding to go with a Sport Touring Hybrid raises that price to $32,845. And my test car did include an optional paint and cost $33,300. All right, with that, now is a good time for me to pull over and show you around and inside and under the hood of this brand new Honda Civic. Most of the styling tweaks are in front of the car, and you can see it with both the upper and lower grills. The lower grill especially looks a bit more pronounced and bigger, like a bigger, wider open mouth. And because this is one of the 2 hybrid trims, we have a lower lip spoiler here as well. You also get a different shape coming off to the side here. This kind of adds a little bit of width to it, and I do think adds just a little bit of a sporty, more aggressive look to the shape. But I did generally like the shape of the 11th generation Civic, so I'm happy that the changes were kept pretty subtle. And that applies to the hood as well, but not what's underneath it. Let's check it out. Well, there it is, your 2-liter 4-cylinder hybrid engine, transversely mounted or side to side like that. The engine itself provides 141 horsepower and 134 pound-feet of torque, and that's actually the minor player between the two. The drive motor of the 2-motor hybrid system produces 181 horsepower and 232 pound-feet of torque, so it's doing the vast majority of the work. All told, you get 200 system horsepower, and Honda doesn't say what your total torque is, so I'll just assume that it is the electric motor's 232 pound-feet. The center line of the front axle is right around at the leading edge of the shock tower right here, and that puts most of the engine ahead of the front axle center line. This is a pretty nose heavy car, it must be said. 64% of the weight is on the front axle, but I've seen nose heavy Hondas still handle great, so I'm still cautiously optimistic. And finally, windshield washer fluid is right here, super easy to access, no problem. Looking at the Civic in profile, you can see that it is basically the same shape right here. However, Honda did add 4 new colors, and this is one of them. It is called Blue Lagoon Pearl, and it is a $455 optional color, and I think it looks nice on the Civic. I think it's a good match for the body style. But I think the biggest thing to notice about the Civic is just how truly big this thing has become. Nearly 185 inches long. This is a compact sedan, but according to the government, it's actually a mid-size sedan. I will go ahead and put the dimensions up on the screen right now so you can check those out, see exactly what I mean, and let you know that I have more information in the description. Both Sport hybrid trims get 18-inch aluminum wheels to roll on, but the Sport Touring gets this 18-inch wheel as standard. The base wheel on the Civic Sedan LX is a 16-inch steel wheel, by the way. And yes, this is a square setup. The wheel and tire in back is the same size as what's in front. Looking at the back of the car, Honda did change the styling ever so slightly, giving a darker tint to the clear part of the taillights, and these are healthy sized taillights right here. But again, this is largely what we got in 2022. One key difference right here, this hybrid logo right here. And they did the right thing with the tailpipe, in my opinion. It is one single pipe right there, subtle, in the background, nothing fake about it, exactly what it should be. All right, let's check out trunk space. And there it is, 15 cubic feet of space in the trunk, and you even get a little bit of additional storage under the floor, a couple of compartments there, and even farther back is a tire inflation kit. And if you need more space than the trunk provides and only need to carry one passenger, super easy to do. Pull a couple levers to release them and then fold those seats down to get more than 15 cubic feet of storage. Yeah, I bet you could fit plenty in here. All right, let's check out the inside. There are two interior color choices, black and gray. This Civic is gray, and I'm happy to see that. I am 5 feet 11 inches or 181 centimeters tall, and you can see that I have, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches of knee room right there. I do have just barely enough headroom as well, and that's despite the fact that we do have a moonroof. The seat bottoms are a touch low, but not bad considering that this is a compact car, so I have decent thigh support. Put that all together and I have a right around 90-degree bend in my knees. And I do, of course, have an armrest with cup holders, so yeah, we'll get to where we need to go just fine. All right, let's look at the front. Aside from being gray, the Sport Touring trim Honda Civic sedan is the only one that gets leather seating surfaces. So there you go. We do have the typical controls on the door right there, as well as a trunk release right there. We do also have several ways to adjust the seat height, fore, aft, seat back, yada yada. There is but one button to the left of the steering wheel, a nice and important traction control off button, and you can manually adjust the tilt and telescope of the steering right here. Because this is a Sport Touring, we get many additional features, not least of which is a 12-speaker Bose sound system right there. We also get a 10.2-inch fully digital instrument cluster and a 9-inch center display. Both of these screens are 7 inches in the other trims. Push button start is right here. The steering wheel itself is a nice thick rim and a fairly small diameter, which means we have decent amounts of knee room underneath the wheel, which is nice. And we do have a lot of controls on both the left and the right. And just behind them, we do have a positive and negative paddle shifter. But we don't have a transmission. So what these control are your brake regeneration levels. Looking at the center display lit up, every Civic gets Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but only the Sport Touring with its 9-inch display gets wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's also the only trim that gets Google built in, which means Google Maps, Google Play Store, and Google Assistant. Having Google built in comes with a 3-year complimentary data plan, by the way. Both hybrid trims do get dual zone climate control and heated front seats, as well as the moonroof right here. But only the Sport Touring trim also gets a wireless smartphone charger. Even though we don't have a transmission, we do have a fairly standard looking Prindle right here, and that's next to a couple of nicely sized and fairly deep cup holders, as well as your drive mode switch right here and your electric parking brake. Let's talk drive modes. You get 4 in total: Econ, Normal, Sport, and Individual. And when you're adjusting Individual, you choose between powertrain modes, like the throttle map and how aggressive the hybrid system is, that kind of thing, normal and sport steering, normal and sport engine sound, and different gauge clusters as well, normal and sport. All very lovely. We will be spending the vast majority of our time in the normal driving mode, but we definitely will play with sport a little bit, and sure, econ as well. But to do that, we need to get back to the drive. All right, let's dig into the powertrain. Where does 200 horsepower and 232 pound-feet of torque come from? Well, as I showed you earlier, it comes from a 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine and a 2-motor hybrid setup way up front. It is the same basic powertrain that you see in the Honda CR-V small SUV hybrid, as well as the Honda Accord hybrid. Not the exact same power outputs though. The 2-liter combustion engine on its own provides 141 horsepower and 134 pound-feet of torque. It is an Atkinson cycle engine that uses direct fuel injection and has a relatively high 13-to-1 compression ratio. And that makes the main power source, the drive electric motor, part of the hybrid system. It makes 181 horsepower and 232 pound-feet of torque. Yeah, big difference. Put everything together, Honda says that the Civic Hybrid can make 200 horsepower in total, which is the exact same as the Honda Civic Si. Certainly not bad. And they didn't specify a total system torque output, but basically I think that means that it makes the same as the electric motor, 232 pound-feet. For a compact sedan, that's plenty healthy. That's also a power bump from the outgoing topped trimmed Honda Civic sedan, which used that turbocharged 1.5 liter to make 180 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque. That's nice. When Honda used the hybrid as the top engine for the Accord, that was actually a drop in horsepower and torque. Briefly, the non-hybrid Civics also use a naturally aspirated 2-liter engine. It also runs on the Atkinson cycle. It's the same basic engine as a hybrid motor, but tuned a little bit differently. It makes 150 horsepower and the same 134 pound-feet of torque. The non-hybrids continue to use a continuously variable transmission and send the power to the front wheels. That's not true for the hybrids, however, because the hybrids don't have a transmission. They rely solely on the electric motors and clutch packs to combine the combustion engine with actually driving the wheels or not. When you're going at slow speeds, basically other than direct drive, you're relying solely on the electric motor, which means realistically, the vast majority of the time, you get 181 horsepower at your peak. But that also means that there's no weird CVT feeling sensations of odd torque delivery or anything like that. It's basically just good direct power. And that's in any drive mode. I'm in the normal drive mode right now, floor the accelerator. Yeah, and I get pull right away. And then you get what feels like a kickdown, and the engine spins up, provides more electricity, and you get really pretty darn decent pull for a compact sedan. Of course, things do get a little bit more aggressive if I put it in the sport driving mode. Floor the accelerator again. Yeah, and it's just a little bit more anxious to get the engine spinned up and provide as much electricity as possible. And of course, the battery pack is there with a bit of a charge in the first place, so the electric motor can really get you moving. Now, this is a little bit heavier than the non-hybrid Civics, but the added power and the added torque make up for that and more. You get a better weight to power ratio than you did with the top trim Civic sedan from before. Now, if you want to be more miserly with your fuel, you can instead put it to the Econ mode, floor the accelerator again, and it still eventually gets there, but you can tell it's a very different throttle map. It slowly ramps up to that. So that makes it a lot easier to be easy on the accelerator and to accelerate a bit more smoothly. But if you're in a hurry, it's not the right drive mode for you. Of course, there is also the individual drive mode where you can pick and choose which settings you want where, but, you know, sport mode is going to be the most aggressive accelerating. Now, there is something else you can adjust. That is the regenerative braking, the off acceleration decel you get to recharge the battery. Robin Warner from the future cutting into this video because I learned a little bit something more about regenerative braking, so I want to show you that. By default, when you're in drive, you pretty much get coasting. If you lift off the accelerator, you may be just a little bit more than coasting is the kind of decel you get. But you have the positive and negative shift paddles. And when you press the negative shift paddle, you'll see 2 arrows, then 3, and then 4. And 4 arrows is the maximum amount of deceleration you'll get from off accelerator slowing down. And it's less than 1 pedal driving, to be sure, but it is a noticeable amount more than standard coasting, certainly. Now, once you get going again, that resets. You're back to the default level of deceleration. If you want more, you have to hit the shift paddles again. While you're still decelerating, you can hit the positive shift paddle and go back to a single arrow, and that basically is coasting. So the way Honda does it, you have shift paddle control of regenerative braking, off accelerator regenerative braking, but you have to reset the paddles each time. Let me show you from the digital instrument cluster real quick. Lifting off, hitting the negative shift paddle, again, there's 4 arrows. That's the amount of decel I get. Once I hit the accelerator, it goes away after a few seconds. You saw the arrows disappear, and if I lift off, I'm back to the default amount. Now, if I hit all 4 arrows and don't hit the accelerator and want to slow down less, I hit the positive shift paddle and I can get it down to 1 arrow. And that is the least amount of decel. That's coasting. All right, let's get back to my original review. Regenerative braking aside, this being a hybrid, we do of course get a nice bump in fuel economy compared to the outgoing turbocharged 1.5 liter. You get 50 miles to the gallon in the city, 47 miles to the gallon on the highway, 49 combined. Pretty darn good. And effectively what I was expecting in a modern Honda hybrid system. Of course, we've talked about power too, and we've got more of it than we used to. So, how does this new Civic accelerate? Of course I had to test that as well. Let me show you right now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test. I do have this Civic hybrid in the sport driving mode, and I do have traction control off, though I'm not expecting that I need traction control off, but let's find out. Okay, coming to a complete stop. Bit of brake torque. All right, off the brake. Oh, okay, whoa. Hey, all right, not bad. Well, I am genuinely surprised at this. Wow, okay, so not that much of a launch. It was a pretty soft launch. We got a little something with the brake torque, just but once the electric motor got up to speed and the clutch fully engaged, yeah, we hustled along nicely. That was strong acceleration from this hybrid Honda Civic. Yes, the 2-liter combustion engine was roaring along, but most of the power came from the electric motor, and definitely most of the torque came from the electric motor, and it proved plentiful. Strong acceleration from the 2025 Honda Civic Hybrid. All right, let's dig into the chassis. It is a 4-wheel independent suspension, of course, unchanged from the 11th generation Civic. That means struts up front, multi-link in the rear. In the 2022 11th generation Civic, I was really impressed with how well the ride and handling balance was formed in this car and how nice it was to drive and drive quickly. There's no reason to think that this one would be any different, and so far in my experience, it isn't. The ride is a touch on the firm side, but that's actually my personal preference, and it still soaks up all the bumps of the road just fine. The chassis feels solid, and it generally feels good. There is one difference, however. All the powertrain sits up front on that front axle, and it is heavier than just an engine. So that means that 64% of the vehicle's weight is now on the front axle. That is a heavy front end. Now, in normal driving, so far, it still felt great. I haven't noticed any problem with that at all. However, I'm a little nervous when you start getting closer to the limits of this car. And there's only really one way to test that, a handling test. So of course I had to do it. Let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for a handling test in this Honda Civic Hybrid. This is a heavier front end, but this is also the same fantastic chassis that I really adored when I drove the Civic sedan for the 2022 model year. And I'm just hopeful that it feels much the same, maybe even a little bit better. We do have more power after all. Let's find out. Oh, I am in the sport driving mode, and I do once again have the traction and stability control off. Yep, electric motor power. Certainly not a bad start. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, that's easy. The feel is right there. Not tons of grip. We are on all-season tires, but man, the feel is there. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yes, this is still the 11th generation Civic. This is still a fantastic driving feel car. The front end is responsive. The feel of the limit, where the limit is, how much grip you have left. Oh, it's all there. It's so easy to drive quickly in this car. I really, really enjoy that. Oop. You can feel the weight of this car a little bit in the whoops in the road. I did notice that. Oh man, oh, this car, it's just so easy to drive quickly. You get great feel out of this front end, even this heavier front end. Oh, worry not, fans of Honda driving feel. The hybrid still has it. The hybrid still has it. I did feel the weight when we were going over those whoops in the road, and the car just wasn't quite as composed as it was with the 1.5 liter turbo in the sedan. But otherwise, the feel is there, the chassis motion is there, the chassis balance is there. So not that much understeer, great feel out of the front end. The steering weight is nice and heavy, so it's easy to be precise. You can feel where the grip of the tire is very naturally. So it's just easy and low stress to go quickly in this car. It's fun. And now it's fun with a much lower fuel penalty as a result. Honda claims that this has the lowest noise, vibration, and harshness level of any Civic, the hybrid Honda Civics. And that's because they did put some extra work into reducing the noises that you would get using the stereo system to balance out certain frequencies. And also we do have acoustic glass on the windshield now. And generally speaking, yeah, this is a quieter, slightly more refined Honda Civic, but it's all relative. This is a mainstream compact car. So it's not like this is quiet or refined or like premium feeling all of a sudden, but it is pretty solid overall. And that's true on roads like this and on the interstate. I did test it there as well. Let me show you that. All right, everybody, time for a quick stint on the interstate. But first, I wanted to show you what you can see on the digital instrument cluster, because there's quite a few options actually. So there's a quick look at the screen right now, but on the left side of the steering wheel, you have this toggle right here. On the right side, you have this toggle right here. First, the right side is also where you have your cruise control options, turning it on and off, canceling, speeding up, slowing down, all that. But this is how you adjust the distance for your adaptive cruise control, and this is what turns on lane keep assist and that kind of stuff. And if you turn it on, look at the screen, you get the 3-lane visual of what the car sees when it's going down the road. And when we're going down the road, I'll show that to you in real time. But back to these switches. On the left side, you can actually choose between a bunch of different stuff to look at on the left side of the screen in the middle of that power display. Why not Alexa? And so there's your power display as opposed to a tachometer. And then on the right side, you have your speedometer, but in the center, you can look at all these different things. My favorite is how the powertrain is working. Is the engine supplying power to the motor, to the battery? Is the engine running at all that kind of stuff. So those are those options. So we've got lane and keep assist on. We will keep an eye on that right there. And that means we have all the assist systems on for the interstate test. So let's get to that now. All right, pulling on the interstate now. Of course, this being a Honda, a 2025 model year Honda, we have a bunch of driving aids. It's called Honda Sensing. I will go ahead and put the list up on the screen right now for you to check out. And like I mentioned a moment ago, I will pretty much have everything on, and we'll see how it works. Okay, cruise control is set at 78 miles an hour to go with traffic. at that speed, the engine doesn't necessarily have a set RPM because we don't have a transmission, but it is fairly quiet and in the background, but you can hear it working sometimes. And we are going through a curve right now, so I will take my hands off the wheel. And yes, lane keeping assist is doing its job and doing it well. It is really interesting. Not only is it showing me in the center of the lane, it's showing the car in front of me not exactly in the center of the lane. You can see there's sensitivity in the screen for it to show you how much lane discipline the car in front of you has. That's really interesting. I mentioned the screen there. Let me show it to you now. So right there in the center of the two digital gauges, we have a very good understanding of what the car sees. As you can see, we are passing a couple of big trucks, and that is what's actually happening right now. And then we've got an SUV in front of us. I am currently in the fast lane in the left lane, but if I were to get over in the middle lane, you will see all three lanes. And there is all three lanes, although ironically enough, there's nothing in the right lane. So it basically looks like I'm in the right lane. Anyway, more fundamentally, we have what I would say is a perfectly reasonable ride and handling compromise. It's a tiniest touch on the firm side when you're talking about just pure ride, but it's plenty compliant. I don't mind it. And as a result, you have good body control as well. And it is absorbing the quick expansion joints and the bumps and lumps in the road without any trouble. Now, when it comes to road and wind noise isolation, it's okay. You know, we are talking about a Civic fundamentally. Road noise is a touch louder than I was hoping, and wind noise isolation is actually pretty good. I would say competitive overall for this class of vehicle. Overall though, it's a great highway cruising car. So, what do I think of this 2025 updated Honda Civic Hybrid? It's really good. It's really, really good. It makes sense that the Civic is following suit of the Accord and going hybrid heavy, but the difference is there is a lot more benefit you get out of going hybrid in the Civic than you did out of going hybrid in the Accord. More power and better fuel economy. Right off the bat, two great things. The price is still pretty good considering the average price of cars these days and everything else. You're still well below that, and this also fills a void. Honda re-released the Insight for the 2019 model year, which was basically a Honda Civic with another name for the 10th generation. It went away 1 year after the 11th generation came out. This is a way of replacing the Insight, so it's back in the lineup again, but with the more mainstream, more popular name. Makes sense to me. But critically, you still get driver enjoyment with this car, even though it's a hybrid, even though it's got a very heavy front end. It's still engaging, it's still responsive, it's still easy to drive at the limit. It's also a reminder of something else. Cars are fantastic. We've got so many SUVs to choose from, and indeed, the compact crossover SUVs especially are becoming quite good to drive. But when you get in the car, you're a little bit lower to the ground, you're just a little bit closer to that tactile feel of the road. It's just that much easier to have that much more fun. Cars are great, and the Honda Civic Hybrid is a great example of a car. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you very much for watching.